Chapter 5, in which a girl named Katie of Koriko adjusts to city life. With the money they had in their pockets, Todd and Audrey took their friend to Kodono's Main Street, while she looks up at the buildings around her. It was an immeasurably glorious and alluring sight, as deep and alluring as any other city in the European continent. Everyone in Kodono is faceless and immeasurable, even the cars in the streets and the streetcars that ran up or down. And going up Main Street, in front of them, the Market Square clock tower became visible in the distance like a tall pillar. Still tingling from the coolness after her transformation, every muscle still quivering from the intoxication of setting foot into a new world. There, she found herself, in front of the two children, dancing, skipping, beside herself, almost insane and hoping to see and consume the sweets she desired.
"There's so many buildings," she said.
"It is a city where anything goes, as long as no astonishing thing happened," Todd said, and points at the cars driving by. "Look, those are cars. It's what we drive in. We use cars to get from one place to another."
"Can you drive a car?"
she asked. "When I'm older," he said, before pointing at the clock tower in the distance. "Look, Kitty. There's the Market Square clock tower. As long as you go up the road while staring ahead, it'll lead you to the square where it stood. This tower is a historic landmark. It was built 150 years ago. On top of it is a statue of the city's founder. Sometimes we use that to tell time."
"Time?"
"When you read a clock, you look at the hour hand first, and then you look at the minute hand. The hour hand is shorter and the minute hand is longer. This is how we tell them apart. When the minute hand goes around in a complete loop, that means 1 hour has passed." As Todd and Audrey take their friend down, she can hear music coming from a store that sells records to the public. Out front was a sandwich board poster which announced, "Just arrived, single of the week, Dorsey Brothers' Lullaby of Broadway." "You heard of music where you came from?" Todd asked. Princess Kitty saw her foot tapping to the beat, while noticing her hips swaying, and said,
"I never heard this music before. I don't know, but it makes me sort of feel good inside."
"You can listen to it on radio and on records," he said. She saw a fire truck passing by. "Firemen are important," he explained. "Firemen puts out the fire in buildings. Ambulances are used to take sick people to hospitals, and hospitals have doctors to make the people feel better after giving them medicine. Look, phone booth. We use a phone to call somebody. We have that at home. Also, look both ways before crossing the street."
"So much stuff to learn,"
she said.
"But now, what I do want to know is the name of this city."
"The city we live in is called Kodono," he said. "The statue that stood on the top of the clock tower is named Ezra Kodono. You see, 200 years ago, in 1735, this city, once a settlement, was founded by Ezra Kodono, who was about 37 at the time. About 50 years later, the settlement flourished into a town with the construction of the clock tower, the tallest structure at the time, towering over an arrangement of small brick houses, shops, and banks. However, 6 months after the completion, the founder became ill and died. He'd never see the town grow and blossom into a city. Despite his death, Kodono's legacy lives on, with a bronze statue of him erected on the top of the tower 100 years after the city's founding."
"So do you think Kodono is going to welcome me?"
she asked. "Kodono would, when the time comes," he smiled. "When you make your presence known." They cross the street and into a city corner that lead to a stall from a bakery that sells cakes, donuts, pastries, and candies. The stall, owned by Pignotti Bakery, is run by two people. Their names are Luigi and Carlotta Pignotti. Carlotta's husband, Luigi, was so fat he looked as though he had been blown up with a pump. Folds of fat bulged out from every part of his body, and his face was like a monstrous bowl of dough, with a drooping mustache and two small greedy eyes peering out upon the city. Luigi's wife, Carlotta, was exceptionally voluptuous, with her red mop of curly hair and a pale pink dress. Upon seeing the couple from a distance, Princess Kitty said,
"What a revolting woman, and what a repulsive husband!"
Todd said, "Well, that's how people are nowadays, unlike you. Not all people are good." He gave her a bunch of coins.
"What are these?"
she asked. "These are coins, Kitty. It's money," he said. "You use the money to buy things like candy or other groceries. You can even buy furniture, too, if you have enough. Sometimes pounds come in banknotes. If you save enough money, you might put them in a bank if you have an account."
"Aren't sweets supposed to be free?"
"Everyone pays for food, even sweets. Sometimes you earn money if you work hard in a job."
"Why must you talk to me about these things?"
"First of all, you're quite young for a princess, and you haven't been to school since you came here. You see, I have to educate you because I've been to school, and I'm the smartest of the family. Think of a problem. I'd be happy to answer for you."
"Chocolate! Chocolate!"
Carlotta boomed from the stall.
"Lots of teeth and it makes you fat. Get a lovely chocolate here." "Gives you trots and lots of sports,"
Luigi said in his thick, heavy voice, before muttering under his breath, "Like no one is ever going to realize." Carlotta saw the disguised Princess Kitty with Todd and Audrey and said,
"What a peculiar little girl those children have." "I know, Miro Caro,"
Luigi said,
"but look at the pink hair and big eyes. Have you seen one with pink hair and big eyes before?" "Oh, never. Something tells me that she'll cause a trouble. You'll mark my words."
When the children and the young Princess Kitty arrived at the stall, she looked up at the conceited couple.
"And are you going to buy some sweets, or beat it?"
Luigi barked. She saw what's on the table, and her pink eyes sparkled. There were donuts, chocolate cakes, chocolate bars, and those sinfully delicious chocolate eclairs. Shame come to those who stated that sweets aren't supposed to.
"Are you buying or leaving?"
he bellowed. Carlotta pointed her finger at the girl's face and shouted,
"And quit to stand at the sweets!"
Todd stepped in and said, "Don't mind her friend. She's just excited about sweets. She couldn't help herself."
"And a likely one to make,"
Carlotta spat.
"And what is her name?"
"Me?"
Princess Kitty said.
"Well, my name is—"
"You see," Todd interrupted, "her name is Katie."
"Katie? Katie who?"
Luigi demanded.
"Where is she from?"
"She's from Koriko," Todd said. "She happens to move here."
"Koriko?"
Katie asked. "Yes, Katie," he said. "Do you remember? Your family moves here, and then you make friends out of me and my sister."
"Stop wasting my time and buy something from our stall!"
Carlotta barked, losing her patience. Katie pointed at some chocolate eclairs and said,
"How much are these?"
"Eclairs cost 2 sterlings each,"
Luigi said. She laid the coins that are equal to 2 sterlings from Todd on the counter. Luigi grabbed one of the eclairs and gave it to her. She took an enormous bite. Then she took another, and another. And oh, the joy of being able to cram a piece of something sweet and solid into one's mouth. The sheer blissful joy of being able to fill one's mouth with savory chocolate. Moaning with appreciation, her pink eyes sparkled brighter. The taste was divine, a morsel of absolute perfection. Her mouth watered just thinking about it.
"Now, are you going to leave or not?"
Carlotta said. Katie went on wolfing the eclair. She couldn't stop, and in less than 20 seconds, the whole pastry had disappeared down her throat, leaving her quite out of breath. The way it tasted, she couldn't eat just one. Surely the owners of the bakery wouldn't mind if she could have more. Then again, maybe not. She wanted more.
I can't possibly leave now,
she said.
I really want more of those sweets.
But Carlotta's face turns red.
Did you just say more?
Don't be silly,
Katie said.
Of course I wanted more.
If we give you more, you'll be sick. One sweet is enough for a child.
Todd grabbed Katie by the ear and said, You heard her. We should leave now. Suddenly, he froze and let go of her ear. His eyes sparkle. Throwing all control to the wind, she handed Luigi a bunch of coins and grabbed the entire tray of eclairs.
More!
She purred with each bite of eclairs. Every bite was like a mouthful of heaven. Carlotta's face went even redder.
You must be joking, aren't you? Do you want us to get in trouble if your family notices you're fat? They'll be suing us for sure. We'll lose our jobs. We'll lose our business to Good Cooking Pan.
Me? Fat?
Katie said, and she began to giggle out loud. In desperation, Audrey grabbed Katie by the ear. Audrey too froze and let go of Katie's ear. Like her brother, Audrey's eyes sparkle.
There is nothing to laugh at,
cried Luigi angrily.
If you really want to eat all these sweets and end up having a stomachache, I would like to see you regret.
Stomachache?
Katie said, as she eats another eclair. Carlotta takes the tray from her.
What about you? I hope you eat these as much as I do,
she went on, taking a donut without paying and ate it without hesitation.
Stai facendo il fumo con me!
Luigi bellowed.
Is that a challenge?
Challenge?
She asked.
Does it involve these delicious sweets?
He pulled her by the collar and growled.
Listen, you little wiseacre. I could eat more than you do, especially sweets. I won first place at the cannoli eating contest in Sicily.
So it is a challenge.
Don't pickle a rat!
He shoved her out of his face.
I'll win this contest because I have a larger stomach than you.
I fear that you may be mistaken,
she said.
Since you're already fat, it's not healthy that this eating challenge is almost certain to disagree with you sooner or later.
How dare you insult my husband, you naughty little girl!
Carlotta snapped.
I ought to damn you! No, Miracaro,
Luigi said.
I'll accept this eating challenge, all right? But the food is only for the customers,
she said.
Dash the customers!
He snapped.
I will not be the figure of ridicule. I want the respect that I want it now. I want to see the little brat regret.
He cuts a piece of chocolate cake with vanilla frosting while Katie devours the rest of the eclairs. Carlotta stared at his husband intently. Todd and Audrey, with sparkling eyes, praised their friend. Pastry after pastry vanished down Katie's throat, her cheeks bulging as she chewed, stuffing more and more into her mouth. Fortunately, her figure remained unchanged. She looked really thin. After all, she was most likely Princess Kitty in disguise, and she's known for eating sweets back home when she was young. Unfortunately, Luigi's figure was showing the effects of his appetite, and not in a good way. With each bite, it seemed, his stomach swelled outward a bit more, getting a little rounder, a little plumper than he already was. His stomach bulked up a little more with each swallow, and soon enough, it was straining against the confines of his already snug uniform. Here and there, a button could be seen pushed to its breaking point, with a widening amount of space pushing between its seams as his gut grew bigger and bigger and bigger. The girl who was in front of him didn't seem to waver. He'll be the one who shall regret. Carlotta's ears perked up, her eyes widening as she heard the telltale sound. Luigi was still entirely occupied with 10 dozen donuts, guzzling them down, his stomach swelling with each gulp, and one of the seams on his shirt had ripped right over his stomach. Through the new hole, his belly button was just barely visible, the flabby flesh around it pushing through and into the air. Concerned, she told her husband,
Maybe this contest isn't a good idea, Luigi. You're getting as fat as a meatball.
He stopped eating so he can breathe. He was aware of its sudden increase in mass. His belly jiggled with each waddle, its taut surface nevertheless rippling with flab and fullness.
So what? She started it.
He snapped. He gave a loud belch and instantly blushed, his cheeks turning a bright red.
Dovresti ascoltare tua moglie, sciocco idiota!
Katie taunts, giggling.
Non è troppo tardi per perdere.
She then devours bar upon bar of chocolate. To his anger, her waistline remains unchanged. And if she wins, that will be bad for him than his health.
Give me a chair, Miracaro!
He ordered. Carlotta brought out a chair for him to sit down. He let out a small grunt as he plopped himself down onto the chair, his buttocks wobbling as he tried to wedge himself into a more comfortable position.
Get more sweets!
He roared.
Use the money we have earned if you had to. I will not lose to that kid.
She ran off to the rival bakery down the block with the money they've earned, while Luigi and Katie eat on. Second by second, they shovel more food into their mouths, cramming dozens of calories and sugar down their throats. As soon as Carlotta came back from Good Cooking Pan Bakery, their rival, with a mountain of baked pastries and sweets, the food in the stall had been eaten away. When she refilled the stall, the contest went on. Luigi's stomach plumped up with each morsel swallowed. It seemed to swell outward with each breath he took, pound by pound melting over his already fat frame, filled with countless delicacies. But Katie remained thin, no matter how many delicacies she devoured over time. Another button popped as Luigi's body grew with each gulp, along with his double chin, his seat creaking beneath his enormous weight, until at last, when the chair itself can stand his weight no longer, his massive rear end smashed through the comparatively feeble wooden chair supporting it. His weight was far, far too much for it to handle, and so with a final creak, it lay pathetically beneath his enormous rump. He stopped eating and noticed it. He let out another long belch. The chocolate he ate was painted all around his mouth. Carlotta got him up to his feet, only for him to see Katie eat more and more and more and more. Her thin stomach churned with every bit of sweet, sugary goodness that she stuffed down. His face turned redder and roared, enraged.
You little cheat! I don't even care if you're still thin! I can still beat you! Piccolo Mamacchio!
He reached out and grabbed another pastry, but suddenly his hands began to shake violently. His breathing began to quicken, and an extreme throbbing pain began in his chest, just slightly to the left. He grasped his chest and cried out in pain, dropping the pastry onto the sidewalk. It seemed like Katie was right about one thing. Since you are already fat, it's not healthy that this eating challenge is almost certain to disagree with you sooner or later. He felt like he couldn't breathe, and he cried out, before collapsing onto his back, and before he knew it, he was dead. Katie stopped eating and looked down at poor Luigi. Carlotta opened her huge red mouth and started to scream. Todd and Audrey went out of their trance and hold their heads. They have no idea what happened until they look down.
Look what you've done to my husband!
Carlotta screamed.
You made us suffer a heart attack after I told him to forfeit.
In that case, I'm not hungry anymore,
Katie said.
Want some sweets to make you feel better?
Carlotta's sadness immediately turns to anger.
Want some sweets to make me feel better?
She screamed.
Go to places, you little brat! Police! Police! Homicidio!
Soon after, 2 police officers came to her presence. The first officer was large with a barrel chest. With his drooping brown mustache, his face almost resembled that of a walrus. The second officer is skinny and have curly brown hair. They both wore matching tunics and custodian helmets with chin straps.
You call for us, senora?
The first officer said. What's the problem? The second officer said. Carlotta points her finger at Katie.
This girl is responsible for murdering my husband!
Murder? Me?
Katie said, looking genuinely puzzled.
A murderer!
Carlotta screamed.
A manslayer! A liquidator! A killer! A malefactor! Don't you talk your way out of this one, you evil little girl! I know what you did! Don't you deny it, along with your two accomplices!
Please be calm, senora, the first officer said. We'll sort things out. First of all, why would you call the wee lads accomplices? I'm sure these bratty children did nothing wrong. Secondly, I think your husband might have a bunch of chocolate on his face. Sorry if it offends you. And what's the name of this murderer? The second officer said.
My name is Katie of Koriko,
Katie introduced.
What about you two?
I'm Norm McCrae, he introduced. Joining me is Patrick Flanagan. We're one of the men who worked for the Kodono Police, Division 6. Koriko? Flanagan said. Which is 247 miles northeast from here? That sounded exotic. I've been there before. I heard that the city is known for its delivery service.
Are you two going to arrest them or not?
Carlotta was impatient. I want to know, Norm said. If she does kill poor Mr. Pignotti, how does she do that without a knife or a gun?
Gun?
Katie asked.
What's a gun?
Flanagan brings out his revolver from his holster and shows it to Katie. You haven't heard of something like this before?
No.
She shook her head. A gun is something criminals would use to rob banks or to hurt innocent people, he said. Sometimes as officers, we stop criminals with these because it's our job.
Oh, no. I would never use a gun, nor would I kill people.
Good lass, he smiled. But Mrs. Pignotti accused you of murdering her husband, Norm said. That means you must remain innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, in accordance with the Kodono Enforcement Act of 1821.
Make that brat get her neck on the hangman's noose if she's proven guilty!
Carlotta snapped.
Better for her to die young than to grow up to live a life of crime!
If I'm innocent, then let me give you my testimony,
Katie said.
Then will me, Todd, and Audrey be set free, clear of this crime?
Please do, Norm said. Until then, you are being detained. Then she began her testimony.
We were at this stall with Audrey and Todd. There we meet the Pignottis, who are more than odd. With so many sweets on the stall, my eyes sparkle even when I'm small. After I pay the fat old vendor, I cannot help tasting the splendor. However, when I ask for more, Luigi Pignotti got mad and roared, I could eat more sweets than you do. But I just ask if that is true. So begins the cursed competition, in order to find some admission. I eat with good health. My body remains thin, but Luigi grows fatter and fatter, wherein his repulsive health will do him in. Eating so much is a big disorder. All it does is expand his stomach's border. As we eat and eat, we never stop. I eat more and more before I'm on top, constantly stuffing my pretty face with all the sugar without leaving a trace, while Luigi ends up in second place. I take the lead. Luigi tried to catch up, but instead his heart was seized and ended up dead when his body lies on the floor. That's when he forfeits and I can never eat more. This poor glutton I feel sorry for, but he got what's coming, that's for sure. All the greed and all the gall has overthrown him for once and all. Consider this testimony as if said by a cat to all the greedy brutes who get fat, fat, fat! And there's nothing more to be said about that.
Well, it is such great pleasure that I'm glad to say this, Norman. Flanagan smiled. I say the lass is innocent. The cute little lass. Hopefully she'll do good later in life. Carlotta shrieked at the top of her voice.
You guilty little brassworm!
She lunged at Katie, but the officers constrained her. She kept on ranting.
Make of it
resisting, Senora! Norm snapped while furiously blowing his whistle. We're placing you under arrest in accordance with the Enforcement Act!
I think you three should leave,
Flanagan said to the children.
You three are free to go. But let's hope it never happens again. You three have a nice day.
And leave we shall. A walk away. And thank you both, gentlemen,
Katie said.
And may law and order prevail.
Without wasting time, Todd and Audrey take Katie out of the city, just as the officers whistle for reinforcements to subdue the ranting Carlotta. We will never see nor hear from her again. Pretty soon, Pignotti Bakery's rival, Good Cooking Pan Bakery, will remain superior. Todd remembered the time when he and Audrey pulled Katie by the ears, and she did something peculiar to them. What did you do to us, Kitty? He asked.
Did what?
Princess Kitty asked. You did something to me and Audrey when we pulled you by the ears at the bakery stall. She turns around and grabs him and his sister by their collars.
Thank you for reminding me,
she scolded.
That's when you two should learn.
Learn what? Audrey whimpered.
That you should never pull a cat by the ears. Pulling a cat by the ears hurts worse than pulling a cat by the tail. Seeing that you've learned it the hard way, I guess that makes you never do that again, as long as you two shall live.
Pulling a cat by the ears hurts worse than pulling a cat by the tail? Todd asked. I believe that's wrong. It's supposed to be the other way around. We didn't mean to upset you this way.
Please!
Princess Katie screamed.
No time for correcting one's mistakes. I don't want to hear another word about it. It's time we head home to your family.
I guess you're right, he said. Besides, Mother and Father are already home by the time we head back.